I can't believe we're here already. It's week 25 of fantasy hockey, which means it is championship week, guys. For those of you that are moving on to your championships or your finals, or maybe it's even your semifinals for some of you, congratulations, first of all. Second of all, I have prepared everything for you in this video to ensure that you take it all the way and get that championship and that win in your league. So hopefully this information will be very useful for you guys. I've done everything I possibly can to ensure that the best players are selected and the best schedules and all that good stuff. So that being said, guys, let's get right into the video. This is your week 25 fantasy hockey preview. Okay, so remember how in last week Mike was saying that there are 3 main nights and there are 0 to no games on off nights, or at least there are very, very few of them? It is the complete opposite for this upcoming week of fantasy hockey. It is spread across the board almost evenly, with there really only being 2 kind of off nights. The minimum amount of games played outside of April 3rd and 5th is 8 total games on the slate. So there's a ton of hockey this week, which honestly, like I've mentioned in previous videos, is a good thing. If you have a championship caliber team and you've made it to your finals, you want your best players to play as much as possible. But there are some off nights that we do need to highlight, in which the Oilers and the Rangers are the best teams that you want to stream. If you want to stream a player for this upcoming week, they have 4 games and 2 off nights. There are a handful of teams, the Avs, the LA Kings, the Devils, the Lightning, the Caps, that have 4 games and 1 off night. And then, as you can see, a ton of other teams play a minimum 4 games on the slate for this week. So really, really good. If you have good quality players on your team, you want these guys to play as much as possible. Really, the only team that just doesn't have any type of benefit is the Las Vegas Golden Knights. 2 games and 0 off nights. They were a big stream in the previous week, where they were one of 2 teams that had 4 games and 1 off night. So if you have a Vegas Golden Knight on your team, like say for example, you have an Eichel, you have a Marchessault, you need to surround these guys with good players to stream. I don't recommend dropping either of those guys by any means. If you have an elite player that plays on Vegas, I would highly recommend holding on to him even still. But again, they are the worst, and by far the worst team to have for championship week 25. So I've put together the best possible add and drop schedule for this upcoming week. If you have a week prior to this upcoming week 25, if you have a week left, or if you have an ad left, excuse me, I highly recommend adding one of some type of player from Florida, the Islanders, or the Penguins. And the way this is going to work is that you're going to want those guys on your team to start the week if there is a delay in your ads. Sometimes when it comes to adding and dropping players, there isn't delays in leagues. But for those of you that have to wait a day to add a player necessarily to your team, and if you have an ad for this upcoming week, I highly recommend using it on one of these 3 teams, because these are the only 3 teams that play a back-to-back to start the week off, April 1st and 2nd. So you're going to get automatically 2 games out of those guys. Then you're going to go ahead and drop one of those players, or however many players that you picked up on the 2nd of April, to then add somebody from the Oilers or the Rangers. These are going to give you the 2 off nights that they're very critical to winning the week, April 3rd and 5th. We're going to skip out on April 4th. It doesn't matter. You don't want to target a team just because they play on April 4th. You want one of the Oilers or the Rangers players on your team for those 2 off nights in the middle of the week. And then you're going to drop them on April 5th, and then add any player essentially from one of these 8 teams who play a back-to-back on the Saturday and the Sunday. And this will give you a total of 6 games played amongst 2, potentially 3 ads and 2 off nights, which essentially gives you the maximum amount of games played possible throughout the entire week. I've given you guys some suggestions here for some of the earlier teams: Tarasenko Rodriguez for Florida, Palmieri Pajot for the Islanders, Russ Bunting for the Pens, and then for the Oilers, Kaner, Henrique, Laff, or Kakko. Chances are you're not going to get to any of the high-end guys on either of those teams. I will just make a note. I didn't include any defensemen here. I'm highlighting some of the defensemen later on in the video, but any of those 8 teams, whoever you want to add, whoever you need to add, if you're in a categories league and you need hits, you want to target somebody specific for hits. So I left those kind of up to your guys' interpretation, but those are the 8 teams that you want to pick from on the back-to-back at the end. So again, One of those three teams you add at the beginning of the week for a back-to-back, then you drop them on the second, you add one of the Oilers or the Rangers players, then you drop them on the 5th, and then you pick up one player or however many players you need for April 6th and 7th because there was a back-to-back on the weekend as well. That will give you a total. Moving on to my main forward streams for the week, guys. Alexis Lafreniere has been absolutely lights out. He shoots, he hits, he blocks, plays a ton of minutes now. Line 2 on arguably the better line in New York alongside Vincent Trocheck and Artemi Panarin. He's got power play 2-time as well. 45% owned, should be readily available to most of you. 2 off nights throughout the week. He is my #1 target for the week. He's an absolute slam dunk. He's been producing. He's been lights out as of late. So go pick him up if he's available. Evander Kane might be a little bit tough to get, and there is a little bit of uncertainty with him just based off the way that this year's been going. But again, you don't want to miss out on an opportunity to grab a guy like this that is just an absolute peripherals machine. If you need hits and specifically hits, he's just an absolute monster. Good shot volume on top of that and blocks as well. His production hasn't been great as of late, but you can't deny the fact that Kane can just score at will at any point, especially playing alongside the Islanders. Even though he's line 3, power play 2, doesn't quite get exposure to McDavid or Draisaitl, they do often change the lines up quite a bit, especially as of late, where there will be times where Kane will end up playing with McDavid or Kane will end up playing with Draisaitl. So again, just because he's on 3rd line right now doesn't mean that you should shy away from him, and he is 67% owned. So if you can get to him, I highly recommend him. Dylan Strome was unbelievable last week and is Dylan Strome has been absolutely unbelievable as of late. I'm still shocked he's below 50% owned with how good he's been. Go look at his game log. This guy is scoring at will right now. Even though they moved him off Ovechkin's line, he still gets exposure to him on power play 1, and he's just driving that second line basically on his own. He's been fantastic. I highly recommend him if you need a center for this upcoming week. He's got 1 off night, so it's not the end of the world that you don't have, you know, a Rangers or an Oilers player. He still gets an off night throughout the week, and I highly recommend you grab him if you need some production. And speaking of production, Anthony Duclair has come out of nowhere, playing on that top line alongside Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov, who have absolutely torched the National Hockey League over the last 8 games. That line has a combined total of close to over 30, I think it's over 38 points, if I remember correctly, in those 8, in their last 8 games. Duclair has been absolutely phenomenal on that top line. He's been shooting, he's been hitting, he's been eating pucks every once in a while as well. So he'll chip in pretty much every single category. I think he's a very, very good option for this week, especially, you know, you get exposure to that top line of Tampa Bay, who have just been torching the National Hockey League as of late. Highly recommend you grab him. He is one of my favorites for this upcoming week. And then some other great options. Speaking of guys that have absolutely been lights out, Gustav Nyquist of the Nashville Predators, again, doesn't see an off night for this week, but in terms of production and power play points, he is second to none, I think, for players under 50%. He's been so good playing on that top Nashville line, who again has been torching the National Hockey League, very similar to a guy like Anthony Duclair. I think he's got a little bit more he's a little bit more safer than I think Duclair is currently, if you're looking at terms of caliber of player, but he's line 1 and power play 1. That's the biggest kind of difference between him and a guy like Duclair, is he gets that power play 1, and he's been so good for the Preds on that top power play alongside Roman Josi and Phil Forsberg. Capo Kakko is another really good option, especially if you're in a deep league. He's probably my #1 option. He's been solid as of late production-wise. Decent enough shot volume and hit volume to justify rostering him, and only at 2% owned for those of you that are in deeper leagues. Given the schedule, he is my #1 pickup for this week if you're in a deep league. Jonathan Drouin has also been lights out, very similar to Gustav Nyquist. You get him for 1 off night during the week. McKinnon and Brandon just continue to go off, and Drouin has just hung on to the coattails of those two players. He's been playing really well as of late. Line 1, power play 1, ton of upside there as well. Very similar to a guy like Duclair and Nyquist if you can't get to either of them, but highly recommend Drouin going into this week with the Avs just being on an absolute tear right now. And then finally, Pierre-Luc Dubois. He'll give you some positional versatility with the center left wing eligibility. He is 39% owned, and he's been playing a lot better hockey as of late in terms of his production. Continues to shoot, continues to hit, and continues to block. Highly recommend grabbing him, just given the fact that he started to produce a little bit more. Line 2, power power play 2, and he has continued to play strong as of late. The defense continues to be thin on the free agent front. I included Matthias Ekholm in here simply because the fact if he is, for whatever reason, available and you're in a super shallow league, he's probably my #1 option. Really unlikely that you're going to be able to get to him. Keandre Miller is a good example, 41% owned. If Jacob Trouba is available in your league, I would probably roster him over Miller. I know he just came back off of injury, so a couple people might have had to drop him this week because he's been taking up a roster spot. But for me, Miller is another good second kind of option. Pair 2, power play 2, shoots, hits, blocks, chips in offensively here and there. Should be solid for this upcoming week. Matt Raw is an absolute block machine. He is probably the #1 block guy over the last 10 games. There are times where he'll hit back-to-back games of 7 or more blocks. He's just an absolute machine when it comes to eating pucks. So if you need a block guy, really, really great option. Probably the #1 option for you guys outside of a guy maybe like Trouba. Payne Goalie is another really, really good depth option. Very similar to Matt Raw, is an absolute block machine. He's been chipping in offensively as well. Pair 2, power play 2, gets you a little bit of power play upside. He will be eligible to play after his 1-game suspension on Tuesday, so don't worry about him being out of the lineup and it showing NA right now. He will be back on Tuesday, back into the lineup. Again, no off nights for him, but really, really solid depth option if you need a defenseman for the week. And then Darren Radish is a super, super deep option. He does have 1 off night. He's playing that power play 2 role in Tampa currently. He's been pretty good offensively as of late, 8 points in his last 10. So I think given the fact that, you know, if you need a depth defenseman, you need a little bit of power play upside, and you can't really find a power play 1 defenseman, Radish should be a pretty solid option with the off night throughout the week. And then finally, guys, moving on to goalies there. Like I said, a lot of back-to-backs to start the week off. So Semyon Varlamov and Anthony Stolarz are both going to get really favorable matchups against Chicago and Montreal on the Tuesday. Jonas Johansson will likely see Montreal on the 4th, which is in the middle of the week if you need a goalie stream at that point. And then Picard will get Calgary on the 6th. He was really solid in his last game, so I have a good vote of confidence for him. And then Joel Hofer as well on the 7th, which is the Sunday, gets a game against Anaheim, likely with Binnington starting on the night before. Hofer will get the back-to-back. He'll get Anaheim, which is another really, really good matchup to finish off your week and hopefully secure the victory for you guys. That is going to do for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Really appreciate all your love and support over the course of the season. For those of you that are going into the finals, good luck. Really, really wish you guys the best in your matchups. I don't know if there's going to be another preview video out for this week. We do have some off-season content that are in the works right now with other creators. We might potentially do some playoff stuff. We're in the middle of working that out, but that will kind of go as we get closer and closer into the whole playoff atmosphere of the National Hockey League. So we will be sure to update you guys. If you guys aren't in Discord, be sure to jump into Discord. If you have any questions throughout the entire week, I will be there. I will be on top of it, helping you guys out in Discord along with Don and some of the other FP guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day.